Well, good morning, Leigh.
Hello, good morning. I've got a vat of coffee in front of me.
Stunning. Welcome back to Queer Gals Watch the West Wing. How are we?
We're well. I've just been at CrossFit this morning where I've copiously whipped myself while trying to do double unders. So I'm in a fair amount of pain.
I don't know what many of the things you just said mean, but thumbs down. The sun is shining. The weight of the global political situation is oppressive.
But you're about to go off on vacation.
I am about to go off on holiday. I'm going, listeners, to Wales, a country famous for rain. Because I'm just that kind of motherfucker who will choose to do things that will disappoint her. But no, I'm going to have a very nice time. I'm going to wear an anorak and I'm going to stomp around in my hiking boots. And quite frankly, I can't wait. I can't wait to drink some lukewarm tea out of a flask and stare into the ocean, contemplate existence.
It's a very you vibe.
Thank you. I feel like it's equally dramatic and active.
Oh, absolutely. It's very, I'm living my best Bronte sister life.
It truly is. Give me a good moor to stride across and I'm a happy gal.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we should mention to the listener that we've neglected to mention that we henned you.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds kind of hazy. But yeah, we, the hen was...
Yeah. For our American listeners, we had Fiona's bachelorette.
It was very much a hen party.
It took me about 2 weeks. It took me about 2 weeks to be fully recovered.
Truly. I think I'm still balancing out my hydration levels at this point. It was the best weekend of my life so far.
Oh, Fee.
I genuinely was. I've never felt so loved and supported and in just such a gorgeous room full of amazing people who I'm very lucky to call my friends. It was, oh my God, it was actually very humbling.
You also looked phenomenal dressed up as Shania Twain. Also, listener, I was maid of honour for this particular hen, so I will be taking full credit for the fact that it was, quote, the best weekend of Fiona's life thus far. Listener, Fiona is applauding me.
Yes, I am not worthy.
Shall we dive in?
Let's. So episode 12, Leigh, storming through the season.
Storming through with a very worthy title yet again. He shall from time to time.
It's giving biblical.
It is giving biblical in quite a big way.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump into the episode recap straight away. And I think, Leigh, what your sort of study session is going to be today is going to make itself abundantly clear with just the amount of questions I have prompted by this episode. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So we open the episode. It's Monday night. We're in the press room and we're rehearsing with Jed Bartlet. One of my favorite pastimes.
More Jed Bartlet hot seating.
Bartlet doing speech prep. It's not going well. And I would just like to give a moment for Toby Ziegler, just halfway back in the rows of seats, leaning back, his feet on the seat in front with a notepad, just giving notes.
Yeah, it's very you in tech.
Would you say? I would say I'm very much sort of dashing around, highly anxious, actually struggling to find a sense of status. Whereas I feel like Toby, the leant back feet on the seat in front, is actually just a very deeply unhelpful body language to bring to someone who's trying to perform.
Yeah, I mean, normally you're more in a deep squat than anything else, but
yeah, I do. I really love to reject furniture in a directing space, just squatting on the floor like a goblin. And Toby is very much cutting the president off and being let's go on that again. Really, can we be hitting that a bit harder? And
Toby is running his rehearsal room is what he is doing.
But I'm also Toby, things are not going well. You need to cut him a bit of slack because the president looks like shit. Yeah. So that's the conclusion. The president looks like garbage. The speech is just full of typos and the teleprompter is a nightmare. So Sam is scurrying around trying to deal with that. And Toby is just incredibly grumpy. And we cut through this kind of like quite uncomfortable working environment, like hot knife through butter, by meeting Josh and CJ, who are just like huddled behind a little monitor, cracking wise, and just being the little sassy duo that they are.
I always like Josh more in the context of his friendship with CJ.
You're so right. I do feel that she brings out the best in him. And I do feel like the jokes that he cracks when he's around her, like, I think he doctors himself a little bit more.
He holds himself more accountable because he knows that CJ is not going to stand for his shit.
Truly, yeah. So they're kind of like cracking wise, and like CJ makes like a little like quip, and Josh comes back to her with a stunning piece of banter. Do you think the joke reflex you have as a defense mechanism is why you have so much trouble keeping a man?
Now, this infuriated me, listener.
I know.
I've never been more
it.
angry. I was absolutely enraged. No, Josh, she has so much trouble keeping a man because of structural misogyny disallowing her from having an empowered sex life without it serving to undermine her professionalism in the eyes of others. While you and Sam, Josh, are free to hoe about as you please with zero professional consequences. That is why CJ is single and I hate you.
Folks, that's just Lee Douglas on the mic here today, just sharing some truths, just dismantling the patriarchy, just one crazy speech at a time. Lee,
she went for like 2 dinners with Danny, and then it already came to bite her in the ass professionally with people saying she was too close to the press. And Josh surely knows this, so he can fuck right off.
I know, but I do think it's quality banter though. Yeah, but I mean, also Josh is an asshole. This we know. The key info that we get before we go to the opening credits is that we are 44 hours away from the State of the Union.
Yes.
And that means that I need to say, Lee, what's the State of the Union?
Well, that is what we will be covering later, is what even is the State of the Union. But suffice to say for now, the State of the Union is like the president's biggest annual speech, which he gives to Congress. And it's the only time every year, because they're meant to be separate branches of government that hold checks and balances over each other. The president only really addresses the joint session of Congress for the State of the Union. So it's like a big pomp and ceremony eve that happens once a year. Sounds
fun. Can't wait to see more. A little more on Bartlet's health. He looks truly awful and is being, how do I put this politely? He's being a real man about it.
Yeah, he's just refusing to take his medicine like a child.
He just says like, my wife hands me pills and I take them. And it's just being very sassy. And then CJ's like, I haven't seen you take your pills. I think they're in your pocket. And he's like, well, I take them from her. I didn't say that I actually take them. And then he pulls out what I can only describe as like a sandwich bag full of drugs. I'm like, how many fucking vitamins has Abbey got you on, Jed? Jesus Christ. I do enjoy the sass though, because at one point he does call Toby Skippy. And I just don't feel like enough people bring the name Skippy like into play in kind of casual conversation. Upon the kind of like reveal of the sandwich bag full of pills, I was like, oh, this won't end well.
No.
Literally within, I'd say, 10 seconds of screen time, he was in fact passed out in the Oval Office, like having smashed a crystal decanter.
High drama, Jed is down. I repeat, Jed is down.
It was very telenovela, like them like opening the door and it like zoomed into him on the floor, like laid out with all of this like shattered crystal around him. That's beautiful.
In the words of Kesha once again, it's going down. I'm yelling timber.
Here's to Kesha.
Love you, hon. We've been on your side from day one. Might I just say? I know you're not listening, Kesha, but if you are,
spiritually, we're just giving this to the universe.
If anyone knows her, please do pass along to Kesha that we've been on her side from day one.
Yeah, pass on our best wishes. So Jed is unconscious on the floor, and Lee, do you know what my first thought was? I miss Morris.
I do miss Morris. I was like, just when you need him.
So for those of you that might not have listened to all of these insane episodes where Lee and I chat absolute shite with each other, right back at the start of season 1, I think it's in episode 2.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
We met Jed's personal military doctor, Dr. Morris, who obviously had like a beautiful young family and a burgeoning career and therefore immediately was killed.
Just shot out of the sky.
Shot out of the sky. And the thing is like, I really feel like his kind of like almost like tough love approach to doctoring would have been perfect in this scenario.
Also, a fun debate I think we should have when we come to the reveal of Jed's diagnosis is, did Morris know? My answer is, I think yes.
I didn't even think about that, Leigh.
Which I think would then serve to also further justify the closeness of the relationship. If Morris is one of the few people to whom Jed disclosed his diagnosis.
We are absolutely tantalizing the listener with this. Unless they've watched the episode and they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Anyway, we have a new military doctor. We do not know his name. He is not given a lot of screen time, but I don't really care. But his diagnosis is, I'm fairly sure he has the flu.
Amazing.
So just another man not dealing with having the flu well. To be fair, though, I will say that like Jed is an older man.
Yeah.
And we have talked at length about his heart health from time to time. So I think it's legit to be a bit worried about him.
Yeah.
Anyway, Leo sends the president to bed, which I find to be a very cute extension of like their lovely friendship. Just like
very cute.
One friend saying to another, like, you're not helping me right now. I need you to go to bed.
Yeah.
But Leigh, we can't go to bed because we must away to the Situation Room.
Yes, Fitzwallace again. Hey, hun.
We are being absolutely spoiled with the amount of screen time with Fitzwallace. And yes, a returning storyline.
We love. I feel like the last episode felt like the moment when they knew that they'd gotten a full series and could actually develop storylines.
There is a high possibility that happened at some point during those first few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But we're coming back to the story of the conflict between India and Pakistan in Kashmir. And we left last episode knowing that we had a 2-week ceasefire. And then Fitzwallace is saying that we're like 3 days out from the end of the ceasefire and that India's army and Pakistan's army are like amassing forces in these areas. And so Fitzwallace is basically telling Jed, like, I'm going to move some troops to that area so that we can continue this like peace process. And that's where we leave it because Jed must go to bed.
He must.
I would like to discuss next a scene that made me like yelp out loud with fury.
Agreed. We encounter Mandy flirting with Danny in CJ's office.
Are you fucking kidding me?
From both of them, are you fucking kidding me? I feel like it is well known through the office that CJ and Danny are having a flirtation. And if Mandy wants to plead the fifth about that, I'm afraid it is just not plausible.
No, beyond a reasonable doubt, it is not. What I'm going to say is the body language, flirtatious. The like laughing and shaking of the hair, flirtatious. Now, do I think Danny is a man who's accidentally flirty? Potentially from time to time, but he is purposefully bantering with Mandy here. So like I'm a bit pissed at Danny.
I'm extremely pissed at Danny. He's got some grafting to do.
I'm pissed at Mandy just because I'm like, just girl, get your kicks elsewhere.
Why are you here at this point? Everyone else has a very high-powered job. Mandy, what is in fact your job title? Can you explain it to me? What do you do?
I think she does like PR.
But we already have a communications director, a deputy communications director.
I feel like we're having a conversation that Aaron Sorkin perhaps had in the writer's room at the West Wing. Anyway, so Mandy's there to give, plot points because she needs something to do. And CJ, understandably, is incandescent, I think would be the phrase I would use. Danny just says, I came by to see my fish. And that was when I was like, okay. So like we had left them knowing that CJ was like, we should go out.
Yeah.
But like, then like, oh no, we'll just go to like a business dinner. And then we weren't really sure what happened. But I think the way that she's treating him, obviously because he unfortunately is flirting with her friend, the way that she's treating him makes me think that she is taking the impact of last week's story quite seriously. And she's kind of like, I have to like cut him off.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this. This is going to be shit. So Danny's like kind of leaves with his tail between his legs because he should. And then Mandy's like, what's the deal with you and Danny? And CJ says, he gave me a fish a few weeks ago. Mandy says, it wouldn't kill you to be friendlier. To which CJ responds, "It doesn't seem to kill you."
Now, I'm conflicted about this.
Yeah, me too.
Because on the one hand, I'm like, absolutely a stellar tete-a-tete from CJ. On the other hand, I'm like, why must we make each of the strong female characters be fighting over what is objectively a subpar man?
Yeah, agreed.
We already have Mallory and Laurie, 2 women to 1 man on Sam. And now apparently we've got Mandy and CJ both on Danny. Like, can we not have a single female character that's not defined by her relationship to men?
Yeah,
Please?
it's a shame because I feel like Mandy and well, not less so Mandy, because obviously she came in the first 4 episodes or so, was just like cuckoo bananas. Kept on saying she was psyched and then giving Josh pictures with his face scratched out.
And nearly crashing her car into the West Wing.
Yeah, giving real Carrie Underwood vibes. No, but CJ's kind of managed to exist this long without kind of like getting tied up in the whole like I'm upset about romance thing. And last week I feel like there was so much nuance to her story in terms of people like reducing her to like being distracted by romance. And so for her to be distracted by romance makes me really angry.
Yeah.
Anyway, the news that we get from Mandy finally is that the story about Leo is going to break tomorrow. So it's going to be in the papers tomorrow. She does say like it's already on the internet. And I was like, wow, times have changed. Like,
if it's on the internet, it's broken.
Yeah, the story's out. So
I was confused by that as well. I was like, everyone knows, no?
But then I was like, on like year 2000, like I would say like not many households would have a home computer.
I suppose that's true, yeah. So they're waiting actually for the newspapers to come out the next morning.
Yeah, and like we don't, like internet access is going to be like, well, we had dial-up at our house for a very long time. Like it was a while before broadband landed.
Same, yeah. I think I only got broadband when we moved to America. I might be wrong.
That feels probably like kind of about right. Should we go to a very stressed Leo?
Yeah.
Now, Leo is very stressed because obviously like the threat of this story breaking has been like hanging over him. Like this at this point, like maybe for like a month or so.
Yeah. I mean,
like
that's a lot to process. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Just like the dread of waiting.
Of just knowing like this thing is happening. It's never going to go better than I'm expecting it to go. Now, what I don't need is for him to be mean to Margaret.
No, literally. This is a hard day for her too.
Yeah. He's being very like snippy and shitty with her and like shouts at her. It's a lot of like, Margaret, please just do it. And it's like, he's not explaining what he needs her to do in any way. He's just giving her like crazy notes like, Josh needs to pick a guy. And she's like, okay, I will tell him that. Could I know for context what that means? And he's like, it just means Josh has to pick a guy. And she's like, okay, great. Like, thanks for helping me do my job.
A very challenging thing for Leo to be going through, but yet another example of a way that a woman would not be allowed to behave in the workplace, in my opinion.
Agreed. And also, I'm like, Leo, I feel like you and Margaret are past this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, she knows why you're upset. You don't have to shout at her. She's in this with you.
Also, like, if you're going down, I think Margaret is potentially, like, her job is in jeopardy. Like, if you are out of politics, they might be able to find another position for her within the West Wing, potentially. But, like, you're the one who's loyal to her. Like, you're the one that's brought her through.
Yeah, if he resigns, then, like, the new appointee isn't going to use his old assistant.
Yeah,
They'll have their own assistant already.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, yeah. Okay. Just let's take a moment for Margaret and, like, the level of kind of stress that she must be under too.
The woman pulls off a flicky bob. That's not easy.
It's really not easy, as you know, evidenced by the woman from the British children's TV show Balamory. So Margaret heads off to tell Josh to pick a guy. She's very upset. Leo's sort of harumphing around his office. CJ comes in. A devastating scene of mutual respect between the two of them.
Why is platonic love so emotional?
It's so well written. And I just have to like continually take my hat off to the writing team on this show, because the way that they depict like hierarchical respect within the workplace is so stunning. 'Cause it's like so often Josh or CJ or Toby or Leo will like talk to each other. And there's one element of it which is just like, I respect your job and like this is why I have these thoughts about it. But then also it's always coming underneath. There's always the undertone of like, but it's you as a human that I care about most. So CJ tells Leo like, tomorrow will be the day. that the story's going to be in the papers. So like, we need to preempt this. So like, let's do a press conference. Let's write you something that you can prepare. And then like, you and I can work through responses to the press. And she just like explains things to him so calmly, but in a very collaborative way. Like from her job's point of view, she's going to be like, I need to be in control of this entirely.
Yeah.
But equally, she's making it clear that like, I want you, Leo, to have a voice in this situation. And she says, I'm going to work with you first.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like she's not going to her staff first and being like, okay, this is the spin that we're doing on this Leo McGarry story. Queen. Anyway, Jed Bartlet, ill in bed. He's a terrible patient.
Terrible.
And he's sort of...
But Stockard, hey!
Here she is. She's back again. Flotus is in the room, people.
I love seeing her in her like slightly more cash wear.
She's kind of wearing like a kind of like fun chocolate two-piece like suit.
But it's like a cardigan and matching skirt rather than like a blazer.
Yeah, it's very Desperate Housewives. Love it. She looks phenomenal.
We also haven't seen her with her glasses on before. She means business.
She literally strides to his bedside, sits in a chair, like sweeps on her glasses and like grabs his medical chart.
Which we were not aware that Abbey is a doctor.
This is what becomes abundantly clear within like the first few seconds of this episode. So the military doctor is like doing a blood test with Jed and like writing up notes and stuff. And Abbey just immediately comes in, like dismisses the military doctor, but with status. Like grabs the chart and then is asking questions and like flicking through it and like using a lot of medical terminology. And I'm like, I think the First Lady's a doctor.
I mean, what is interesting is Jill Biden is actually the first Lady to ever keep a job of her own while being First Lady. No one had ever done that before. So I'm guessing that Abbey essentially gave up her career as a doctor when Jed became president.
And this is where I started untangling the crazy spider's web of like, what the fuck is Flotus doing in this show? It would make so much sense if she's a doctor and so she can't be like working in the medical profession, like at a hospital full time. But what she probably is doing is like lots of philanthropic work.
That would make sense if she's almost doing like medical aid.
Yeah, or like Doctors Without Borders and stuff.
Yeah, and that would make sense.
Is like heading up groups that are like flying to different countries around the globe and like providing medical care.
Also, as we know, the most recent First Lady, when this show was being made, Hillary Clinton, her like big issue topic that she took on as First Lady with slightly catastrophic results, like it did not go well for Hills, bless her, but she tried to, as First Lady, like reform healthcare. Like she essentially tried to do something like more broadly sweeping than Obamacare ended up being before Obamacare.
Wow.
But she kind of got shot down and slightly called like a bossy woman and a socialist. Yeah. But so it makes sense that they're kind of putting Flotus in like a healthcare field because that was Hillary's big passion project as Flotus.
Yeah, I love it. Do you know what would have been really greatly? All the times when we were talking about like where Flotus is, oh, she's off in Pakistan, just giving any reference to her occupation.
Yeah. Just like what she was doing there, rather than just saying she's in this random country in the world.
But I think what we can all agree on is that Dr. Abbey Bartlet is fucking sexy.
I want her to march into my bedroom when I'm sick and tell me what to do.
Me too. Jed is like absolutely out of his mind with a fever, but just has the look on his face of a man so like sexually aroused by his wife.
But it makes sense. I mean, there's nothing hotter than seeing your partner do what they do best.
Yeah, like, you're so right.
I think that's why so many people get together at work, is because like seeing your partner like in their element as a professional, suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm seeing you in a whole new light.
So Jed's exact words are this, which is, I could jump you right now from his sickbed. And Abby's like, I could kill you right now.
I mean, who hasn't had that convo with their partner?
Like basically once a day. Just like, please, I'm so busy, just leave me alone.
They're so hot together though.
They really are. Like, I love the Bartlets. I've talked about this in detail before. I love the Bartlets. I just think I would vote for them. And I just think that I would be like so invested in their like social media presence. Like I want to see pictures from their like summer break. I want to see their winter Christmas card. I want to see like, oh, fun, like flashback Fridays with the First Lady and POTUS, just like them, like in like college, like a little like vintage number. I just give it to me.
Yeah.
Abbey is very concerned about the fact that Jed fainted. She says, was it like the time in Nantucket or the time at my parents'? And I'm like, Jed is a fainter. Bad news. What could mean a blood pressure thing, could be something worse. More on that later. Tuesday morning. It is now Tuesday morning. And something that we don't have currently is an invitation from the Speaker of the House to come and give the State of the Union.
Correct.
Which feels like a very big deal.
Yeah. That actually happened this year as well. It took the Speaker of the House, obviously, he was so busy on Covenant Eyes. It took him a while to actually invite Biden to give the State of the Union this year.
Yeah. I almost choked on a big glug of tea then. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Big Mike Johnson.
Oh, vile creature. So we're kind of like, that kind of invitation is sort of a storyline that kind of flits around for the rest of the episode. But we're going to circle back to Margaret being tasked to tell Josh he needs to pick a guy. So Donna has come up to Josh and is like, Margaret told me you need to pick a guy. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, Leo didn't tell me. So like, what does it mean? And Josh is like, oh, I know what it means. You don't need to know. And she's like, it's helpful for me to do my job if you tell me things.
Yeah.
Finally. And he's like, okay, cool. So I have to pick someone from the line of succession to the president. So someone from the cabinet, right?
Yeah.
To stay in the White House while everyone else basically goes up to the Capitol for the State of the Union in case someone tries to blow up the Capitol building.
Correct.
So we have someone to lead government.
Correct.
And they have chosen the Secretary of Agriculture.
Yeah.
And he does a lovely, fine job later, which we'll get to.
He's a lovely young man, by all accounts.
Yeah. But we are on Tuesday morning, which means that the newspapers have dropped this morning with the Leo McGarry story.
Yes.
And Josh just says like this very fantastic and beautifully devastating line to Donna, which is just, be sweet to Margaret and Leo today. This may not be the worst day of their lives, but it's going to be in the top 5.
Every time I count Josh out, he says or does something to just claw his way back into my heart. And also it's the fact that he includes Margaret in this. Like that her life's work has been supporting this man's career. And therefore it's equally as bad of a day for her as it is for Leo. I find that so respectful to Margaret and devastating. Yeah.
Yeah. Justice for the EAs everywhere in that moment,
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah. So Sam, CJ and Josh are all briefing Leo for this press conference that he's going to do, that he's been working on with CJ, to try and like basically like frame his narrative of Lillian Field's story. And so they're like trying to prep him with questions that the press might ask. And going to meetings comes up.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, do you go to meetings? Expecting him to say no, because obviously he's Leo McGarry, like what AA meeting can he go to? And he's like, yeah, I go to a meeting. So there's like a little kind of like, obviously he doesn't disclose whose meeting it is or where it is because it's AA. But like Sam, CJ and Josh aren't like, oh, could it be so-and-so's meeting?
No, yeah.
So I don't know if it's public knowledge that Hoynes is an alcoholic.
I don't think it is. Because he wants to be president. He was running against Bartlet in the primary, and he said to the Texas congressman in one of the early episodes, I'm going to be president one day.
Yeah.
One day it's going to be me.
So I was like, that's an interesting tidbit. Just going to pop that in my top pocket for another day. But yeah, basically Leo's being like beautifully like stoic and
like an old Irish man being kicked off of his land during the famine. Like that's the vibe it's giving me.
It's so like, I was born in this house and I'll die here. They'll have to take me out in a coffin.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what he is saying, and he's being very firm with the gang about, is like, your job is to work for the president, so you need to be serving him. Now, there's a possibility that there's a way I'm not coming back from this.
Yeah.
So like, I don't need you to be helping me. I need you to be helping the Bartlet administration right now.
Yeah.
In his own words, I go down, I go down. I'm not taking anyone down with me. Is that clear? And they'll just say, yes, sir.
Like a sergeant, do I mean sergeant? Whatever a higher rank is, leading his troops over the hill.
Yeah, it's very kind of like Winters in Band of Brothers, just like leading the boys on D-Day.
Very Winters, very Winters.
So time for us. So we do get to see some of Leo's press conference. And all I'm going to say is I think he does very well.
Yes.
It's quite emotional though, because like it's so vulnerable. But the kind of like energy of that is just massively undercut by the fact that like Donna and Josh have gone to go and get frozen yogurt together.
Yeah. I don't know why they went for coffee rather than like being there to support Leo, but maybe it's like we've jumped forward in time and it's the next morning or something. I don't know.
It just feels like we should have perhaps been in the room with Leo.
It also feels like that's a date. That's not something you do with your EA.
It's a real date, isn't it? Like,
I'm going to like, it's like a cute little like, oh, we'll meet up on our lunch break and get froyo. Like,
guys, it's a date.
Yeah.
Like, don't be going on dates together if you're not a couple.
Please.
So Toby has a few like nightmare meetings in this episode. And I don't really understand why they're happening, but I'm assuming that it's all to do with the State of the Union.
Explained, yes.
Cool. But he's having to deal with Congress, which Toby truly hates. And the countdown on the clock says 31 hours to go to State of the Union. Listeners, Jed is still bedridden, like unconscious, tranquilized,
stressful,
bedridden. A little check-in between Leo and his daughter Mallory,
which was so beautiful. She's got her smoky eye back and the white coat is back. I love a TV show where we're like, that is that character's coat. That's their winter coat. And that's the one that they have.
I do enjoy that too.
It makes me really happy. I don't know why.
But Mallory's sad because she's like, you didn't tell me when the press conference was going to be and I wanted to be there. Also, the president, in quotations, has written a statement supporting Leo, but it was actually written by Sam and Josh on the president's behalf. And obviously the president is like tranquilized in bed, so is in no position to like read or give thoughts on it. And Leo tears them down. He's like, how dare you put the president's credibility in danger? This is not child's play. Like, I know you want to save me, but like, let me be in charge of my own life. Yeah. And he makes a very good argument, but Sam Seaborn, once again, Lee, it's like when you just like, you've just disregarded him and then he comes back in, he says, they want to tear you down, plain and simple. They don't like you, so this is what they do. And for us not to defend you, I disobeyed you, I apologize, but that's the way it is.
And then Leo comes back with simple, this is not what I wanted, which, listener, destroyed me.
Yeah, tears at this point.
Yeah.
The only way I got dragged out of that hole was by the fact that we then find Stockard loose in the West Wing once again, gossiping with Mallory and giving very big, like, nice threats, girl, energy.
Yeah, you've got an itch for Sam Seaborn. I don't like the phrase, you've got an itch.
That's thrush, babe. Get that sorted out.
I don't like that. Please, it's called a yeast infection.
Get yourself some Caniston. For the love of God. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm just going to say, I'm going to put a veto, Lee, on us ever using the phrase, like, I've got an itch for someone.
It's so heinous.
Yeah.
Listener, I will just say, at Fiona's hen, the air conditioning broke in the venue that we were in. And we had been at a very, very fun burlesque show that had about 8 different hen do's at it. And
it was swampy. It was swampy down there.
Showlesque in Brighton. If anyone's looking for a fun hen activity, they were amazing. It was so hot in this room, and it turned into a club after. And some disgusting men arrived just as it was opening up to the public. And one of them said, "It smells like a yeast infection down here." Because of all the sweaty pussy, which what we felt was that we felt that it was especially funny that he felt the need to make it a compound sentence.
Because of the sweaty pussy.
Let me explain why.
Just him being like, I know about yeast infections and you might need some context. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I can't believe we've used the phrase sweaty pussy in a fucking podcast about West Wing. Oh no, Lee, and the next thing we're going to talk about is so heavy.
Okay, listener, back into serious mode. Abbey has a very serious conversation she needs to have with Leo.
Leo's like, Abbey, you're lying to me. We can't postpone the State of the Union speech because he has the flu and he can do this. But I think he doesn't have the flu. So like, he's fainting a lot. It's happened before. He's on a lot of medication. Abbey, what's going on? Stockard Channing gives a beautiful performance, including an incredibly cinematic single tear.
It's giving Not Without My Daughter. It's giving Ghost.
Jed Bartlet has multiple sclerosis. And he's had it for like 6 years.
Yeah.
And like, Leigh, when I tell you that I was gagged.
I was so shook.
I did not see like a long-term health condition being a storyline for that character.
No, not at all.
Like maybe like a bit of back pain or like a bit of like, oh, you got to watch your cholesterol. But like actually to give someone a very serious condition feels like a massive character choice.
Huge.
On a long-running TV show.
And it will be interesting to see how much they fully commit to that as a story for that character. Because I think you can't bring it in without fully committing to what that means in the trajectory of like all, 6 to 7 seasons. Mm-hmm. And I really hope, because obviously like multiple sclerosis is such a horrific disease, I really hope that they kind of do justice to that experience for people who have to live through that.
Yeah. So Leo immediately goes to see Bartlet and is like, you need to tell me this. And Bartlet says that he's been diagnosed, for 7 years, but he has a specific type of MS, which is like manageable and doesn't have a big impact on his life expectancy.
It seems like it's more episodic.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see like how much information we get as the show goes on. But this scene, Leigh, these men are fucking destroying me.
Yeah.
Leo says, Jed, of all the things you could have kept from me. And Bartlet's like, you haven't called me Jed since I was elected.
Yeah.
And for context, Bartlet is like in his bed like Granny Wolf right now. like covers up to the chin. And then we have this exchange.
Oh God. I didn't know we were going here. Yeah. Yeah.
When I was lying on my face in the motel parking lot, you were the one I called. Jed replies, when you stood up that day, I was so proud and I wanted to be with you. I tried to get up and I fell back down. And Leo says, I know the feeling.
Oh.
It's the line, when I was lying on my face in the motel parking lot, you were the one I called.
I just think like you see these conversations in like really like macho environments, like, oh, we're at war and you've been wounded. But I think to see this kind of a conversation between someone with a chronic illness and somebody with a substance dependency issue, and also between two older men.
That for me, I think, because it's like coming from like a generational perspective, it's like maybe that's one of the reasons why it's so refreshing is I'm like, we're watching two men in their early 60s, do we think?
Late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah. Telling each other they love each other.
Yeah.
And you don't, that's not depicted. Like that kind of like fraternal love just isn't like, you have a lot of like broing. Like, love you, bro. Or like young soldiers.
Yeah.
But you don't get a lot of like older men being like, I need you.
Yeah.
I love you and I wanted to be with you today. And it broke my heart that I couldn't stand up there with you.
Yeah.
Two pieces of crazy conjecture from what is one of the most stunning scenes ever written. Leo finds Jed in his bed, like Granny Wolf, watching soap operas with poor Charlie, who's evidently just been told he has to just sit and watch soap operas with Jed. Well, Bartlet just asks constant questions about everything like a nana. And then the other bit of like crazy conjecture is a reprise of Lord Marbury from last week's episode with his plan, which is buy off India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
Just like bribe them not to go to war. Leigh and I in our show notes were like, that plan's like literally crazy. Like, what the fuck? But then I thought about what you'd shared with us last week that Sarah had sent us. And I was like, actually, that kind of ties in kind of quite neatly with what she was talking about. And like this sort of intervention between those countries and the US ended up being like very economic. It ended up being about like investing in infrastructure and investing in weaponry and in the armed forces. And like, it kind of makes sense But, you know, cool. We've just fixed a war, so we can just all move on. Sure. Just like, so glad that this like group of white people just like have just like dealt with this and just, you know, we'll just throw some money at them and it'll go away.
I would just like to throw out there that I think Lord Marbury's depiction of the British role in India and Pakistan historically was something that I found to be quite disrespectful to that history and not something that I think should really be being put out there through like a comedic lens. No disrespect to the performance of the actor,
no.
But I think when we think about that history and we think about partition, I don't think that's a place that we should be coming to for gags.
Yeah, it feels like a poor taste from the writers there.
Agreed.
To minimise in that way. Small piece of conjecture regarding Toby Ziegler. He's having these meetings with Congress people, which Leigh's going to explain to me. And he just goes on like a rant about the importance of the arts. And I was like, oh my God, maybe Toby Ziegler's my dream man.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah.
Just like Leigh has found his mojo again. He's passionate. I don't quite know how he's gone from like a reference to Death of the Salesman to like this place. But I was in the scene, I was like, I'm so lost. I have no freaking idea what's going on, but I'm so here for it. Yes, Toby, go for it. Like, just tear these Congress people to shreds. I don't care.
I love that the thing that like tipped Toby back into finding his mojo was somebody getting Arthur Miller's name wrong.
Yeah, actually, like, I really love that. I think that's hot. Wednesday night. So we are the night of State of the Union. Leigh, should we just discuss one of the most fucking batshit moments of writing in this show so far? So
yes.
So Sam, CJ, and Josh are huddling. There's like quite a lot of like White House staff in a room. I'm assuming kind of like off of like they're collecting to go over to the Capitol.
Yes. So they're all kind of poised, ready to watch Bartlet's big moment in the sun. Yeah.
And Sam's like, yeah, I wrote this speech like about Bartlet supporting Leo. Like that's, you know, I guess I'm just like a really passionate bad boy and like I'm always going to break the rules. And then he's like telling CJ and Josh about how he like doesn't know where he stands with Mallory. He's like, you know, we went on this date, but it wasn't a date. And like, then like we like go have coffee, but like, I don't know, like I think she likes me, but then she like gives me the cold shoulder. Cue Mallory like cutting across the room with like the speech that Sam wrote and being
about
like,
her dad
and being like, did you write this statement defending my father? And he says, yes. And then they just snog each other like teenagers.
The snog is the correct word. Yeah. It's a real like, I'm going to grab your face.
It's a wet kiss.
Yeah, fully.
In a room, I can't describe Leigh how many people are in this room. She also
so many high-powered people.
She also like comically throws the papers in the air so they like sprinkle down around them whilst they're making out. And CJ and Josh are just like, I would say 45 to 50 centimeters from them, just stood there watching on.
CJ's face watching them make out was one of my favorite comedic moments of Alice and Janney ever.
Now, although it was completely unhinged, it was in fact a catalyst for some more kissing. So CJ immediately goes to Carol. Hi, Carol.
Love Carol.
We love to see Carol again. And she's like, can you get Danny to come to my office? Cut to CJ's office and a little close-up of Gail's fishbowl, which has a tiny lectern in it.
Which is so cute.
And Danny's just like waiting in her office. Obviously, because CJ has to be like funny about the fact that she's got a crush on someone. She like knocks and asks if she can enter her own office, and she's very flustered.
And she's talking about how like inappropriate it is for anything to happen between them, and then says, nonetheless, I do seem to have a preoccupation, a sort of girlish, I suppose, thing.
Which I love. And then they're like standing and they're like really close to each other, but like not touching. And she said, you know, I thought what I'd do is kiss you, you know, on the mouth, and then I'd just get past it. And
I've never loved a woman more.
I love her, but also I'm like, that is me.
It's so you.
I felt very
just like
attacked.
So annoyed that you have a crush on someone.
And then Danny grabs her face and kisses her, and it's fucking hot. And like his like one hand is like on her face, like in this like passionate kiss, and then with their other hands they're just holding hands. And that sounds really lame. But it's actually incredibly cute because like they haven't had like almost zero actual like body contact.
Yeah.
And so just like go for a handhold. I was like, oh, please. So frankly, I'd like there to be more kissing, please.
Yeah.
And let's close out this week's episode before Jed starts a speech with Bartlet going and meeting Roger, the agricultural secretary in the Oval Office. And Roger just brings Jed a gift.
Which is so beautiful.
Which is just like a Latin translation of the Constitution.
We love a man who's like, I have been given the opportunity of a one-on-one moment with the president, and I'm going to make the absolute most of it.
It's a very, very thoughtful gift.
Extremely thoughtful, because you know how much Jed loves Latin.
Exactly. And the Constitution.
His two favourite things.
And then Roger just says, knock him dead, sir. What a nice man.
What a lovely young man. What a lovely young man.
A credit to his family.
Mm.
And then so we see sort of like Leo kind of like lingering in the doorway, but like Jed doesn't know he's there. And Bartlet like goes to leave and is like passing on like information like, oh, you know, if I get blown up or, you know, something terrible happens up at the Capitol, like this is what, you know, this is just like roughly how you run the country. Mm-hmm. So Jed goes, you got a best friend?
Yes, sir.
He's smarter than you?
Yes, sir.
Would you trust him with your life?
Yes, sir.
That's your chief of staff. Leigh, you're my chief of staff and I love me.
You're my chief of staff.
And just like showing Leo just like behind the door, like hearing his friend say that about him on like the worst day of his career to this point.
Yeah.
We just wept, just absolutely wept. Like a baby. And that's it. And that's how they left us.
We love unconditional love between bros. Between anyone.
Yeah. What a fucking classy episode. Some quick fires?
Absolutely.
So, best fashion?
It's a three-way tie for me. I think CJ's gold suit that she's dress suit that she's wearing for the State of the Union, which we neglected to mention, is just phenom.
A fantastic fit to be wearing for your first kiss with your crush.
So good. I love the kind of like slightly dressy business attire. I feel like that's not a genre we've seen thus far. We've only seen like workwear and extremely formal. But I would like to give honourable mention to Margaret's fringe.
Yeah, agreed. It's doing some heavy lifting in this series.
We've not adequately discussed it. It's an excellent fringe. And then just Abbey's glasses sweep onto the face.
Yeah, stunning. Absolutely stunning. And also for the time, some lovely glasses.
Yes, she's done well. She's done really well.
Rough time. We're in a rough decade for glasses wearers.
Yes.
The gold suit for me is a clear winner. It's a sort of like light crushed silk. I just think it's very classy, but also it feels very practical.
Yes.
What could a British or Irish politician never get away with?
Saying to their partner, I could jump you right now.
Couldn't agree more. Spine chilling, the thought of it. Just it's something that I've voiced before. I feel very passionately about. I actually feel physically sick. Any sort of sexual vibe with British politicians, a no for me. Just a big no. Like it's not a sexy industry in my country, and I am upset by that. Like, would love a bit of eye candy, but as it stands, no, thank you. No, I would not like that. In terms of like guns, abortion, free speech, our bingo card, if you will, I think obviously we were still like very much focusing on Leo's smear campaign from Lilienfield.
Yes.
But actually kind of maybe not in the episode because I didn't actually get to see the State of the Union or really hear anything about it. I guess it's like quite a big kind of political moment. So, man, I feel like a man, Leigh.
I go down, I'm not taking anyone down with me.
Yeah, beautiful from Leo there. I personally think, and I know how much you hated this, but I loved it. I loved Josh's. Do you think the joke reflex you have as a defense mechanism is why you have so much trouble keeping a man?
It makes my blood boil.
I mean, it boils my piss, Leigh, but the thing is it's funny.
I know. I think I was just the single gal for so long. And so like having people like conjecture as to be like, why do you think you're single? Is deeply triggering for me.
Very vile. And what moment made you proudest to be an American?
You got a best friend? Is he smarter than you? Would you trust him with your life? That's your chief of staff.
Mm-hmm. No notes. Perfect.
Yep.
Well, Leigh, since, we've been emotionally destroyed by both Jed Bartlet and Liam McGarry, I think it's only fair now that you just soothe my brain and heart by teaching me something that I know. Honestly, I can't tell you how little I know about this. The phrase State of the Union I heard for the first time watching this episode.
Absolutely. So what even is the State of the Union? So Article 2, Section 3 of the US Constitution states, the president shall from time to time, episode title.
I see.
The president shall from time to time give to Congress information about the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient.
Okay, so it's basically saying every now and then the president needs to come and tell us like what he's doing and what his plan is.
Exactly.
Great.
So the first State of the Union was January 8th, 1790. And George Washington personally delivered the first annual message to Congress. It was the shortest to date, coming in at 1,089 words. Jimmy Carter delivered the longest written State of the Union, which was over 33,000 words.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. And the longest spoken State of the Union was Bill Clinton in 2000 at 1 hour and 28 minutes.
And that would have been his last State of the Union?
Yes.
Oh my God, look at me with knowledge.
Yeah. So the first State of the Union given by George Washington, although it wasn't called the State of the Union yet at this point, his focus was very much on the concept of union itself, because they were very much still establishing a nation and maintaining the union of all the different states that were coming into being. So at this point, we've not yet had westward expansion. So when we're talking about the United States, we're really just talking about the East Coast.
I just would like to preface any conversation around George Washington with the fact that when you say George Washington, I am purely thinking of the actor from Hamilton.
Who was also Simba.
Yes, I am.
Yes, correct. I think that's like a fine visual.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm into it, so.
So he was basically super aware that he needed to prove the success of the union of states and why each state shouldn't just like be its own nation.
Okay, cool. What a very interesting history for that political thing. Oh, cool.
That was the first one in person. For the next 112 years, it wasn't actually like a speech. It was a statement that the president wrote, and it would then be printed in newspapers for the American public to read.
That seems very smart. Like when you're like, people didn't have like radios or phones and stuff. Yeah. Well, they would, not everyone would. Basically,
the president outlines their legislative agenda and national priorities. So some examples of famous State of the Unions. James Monroe in 1823 discussed the Monroe Doctrine, which was the centerpiece of his foreign policy, which called on European countries to end Western colonization. So we love the Monroe Doctrine.
Hey, that feels progressive.
Yeah. Lincoln expressed his desire for slave emancipation in his State of the Union in 1862. Franklin Roosevelt spoke about the now famous 4 freedoms in his State of the Union in 1941, which are the freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And he basically outlined those as his justification for prepping the American people for potentially getting involved in World War II.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that the 4 freedoms came from the State of the Union.
Yeah, so it came from Roosevelt's State of the Union in 1941. The first time that it became a speech to Congress again was Woodrow Wilson in 1913. It was actually quite controversial at the time. look at me, American, controversial. That he delivered the annual message in person to both houses of Congress. And then when radio and TV came in, it became kind of, I suppose, almost like the Queen's Christmas message, in that it's a chance for the president to touch base with the American people and kind of let them know how he's doing as well.
I love it as a concept. I honestly think it's something that we should do, that the Prime Minister should have to do in the UK.
The first on radio was Calvin Coolidge in 1923. And Franklin Roosevelt began using the phrase State of the Union in 1935.
So that's kind of when it was like properly coined.
Yeah. And Harry Truman's State of the Union in 1947 was the first to be broadcast on television.
And that probably would have been like a huge national moment, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of similar to when like Queen Elizabeth II's coronation was on telly in like, I want to say 51, but I think that's incorrect. So I don't know.
Interestingly, remember in the beginning of this episode, they joke around with the line, the era of big government is over.
Yes. See, that was like, there was a lot of jesting around that. And I was like, I don't understand.
This is a phrase that Clinton famously used in his 1996 State of the Union. And it was a big pivot for the Democrats because they've obviously long backed government solutions to social problems. And basically, in the coming months, Clinton kind of reversed his position, I suppose, a little bit on that and got on board with the idea of Republican spending cuts. I've just sent you a YouTube link in the chat.
Oh, is this the one that you sent me last night?
No, this is another one.
Okay. Do you want me to watch?
Yes. So just for the listener, I have sent Fiona the trailer for the television show starring Keifer Sutherland, Designated Survivor.
Okay, I'm going to play now.
Hello?
Hi, Daddy.
Who is this?
Your daughter?
No, that's not possible. My daughter's asleep, and I know that because I kissed her goodnight almost 2 hours ago.
When are you and Mommy coming home?
There are times when we make history.
It doesn't matter. You're going to be asleep by then, right?
And there are times when history makes us.
Listeners, Fiona's eyes are very wide.
Good night, Daddy.
Good night, little P.
To ensure you that the same
She's showing me the goosebumps on her
shared
arm.
by our fathers, our
It's weird. Yeah, ours just went black too.
Mr. Secretary, you need to put the phone down.
Mike, what the hell is going on?
I said put the phone down.
Please check your bag.
Her hands are in her hair.
Oh my God.
Mike, please, just tell us what you know.
Capitol's been attacked. Congress, cabinet. Eagle is gone. Sir, you are now the president of the United States.
I'm just going to pause it there. Oh my God.
It's high drama. It's high drama. So, listener, I wouldn't...
I'm not aware of this TV show, and I will now immediately start watching it.
So, listener, I would invite you to go and watch it. The trailer is available on YouTube. It will be in the resource list that we'll be putting on our Patreon. If you would like to go and watch it. Yes. So basically, the concept of Designated Survivor, the TV show, is that, as we saw in this episode of The West Wing, every year for the State of the Union, there is assigned a designated survivor from the line of succession. The Presidential Succession Act of 1947 set the line of succession. So in order, the current line of succession, the first in line to the president, should anything happen, is the Vice President, Kamala Harris. We then go to the Speaker of the House, who is, unfortunately, Representative Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Then we go to the Senate pro tempore, Senator Patty Murray of Washington, who we love. I met her once. She's amazing. Then we have Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's also a babe, Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. So that's the first six.
Okay.
And because the State of the Union happens in the House chamber and the Vice President, both branches of Congress, and the full cabinet are all there, the full line of succession is all in one building at one time, which feels like a terrible plan in many ways. So in the event of a catastrophic event where the Capitol is targeted. One person every year is basically left out of the State of the Union. And then the concept of the TV show Designated Survivor is the Capitol is attacked and no one survives. And so the designated survivor, in this case Keifer Sutherland, assumes the presidency from quite a minor cabinet role.
It's a impeccable concept for a TV show. Can't wait to watch. So Roger, the Secretary for Agriculture, that is our like designated survivor character.
That is our designated survivor for this year. So when they were saying to Josh throughout the episode, you need to pick your guy, Josh is in charge of selecting the designated survivor for the year.
That's a huge responsibility.
I mean,
I suppose he's deputy to Leo, so...
He is deputy chief of staff. So he is, we were discussing in last week's episode, Alyssa Mastromonaco, the impeccable deputy chief of staff to Obama. So Josh is the Alyssa Mastromonaco of this West Wing.
He wishes.
So he truly wishes. So he is a very high-powered man, despite all of his shenanigans. So yes, so the designated survivor for 2024 was the Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona. And actually, the designated survivor in the Clinton administration was actually Dan Glickman, who was the Secretary of Agriculture. And he said of the experience that he was taken to a location outside Washington, my daughter's apartment in New York, where I was accompanied by key military staff and the Secret Service, including a military officer carrying what I presume to be the nuclear football, a black leather-encased aluminium briefcase that would be used to authenticate the person ordering a nuclear strike.
It's a tough like Wednesday, isn't it?
It truly is. And generally, it's considered to have been a tradition that started during the Cold War, which kind of makes sense. But they didn't publicly announce the first designated survivor until 1981. I guess it was just a secret thing until then. The designated survivor does receive some training on assuming the presidency, but what that training is or how they are briefed is classified. So we don't know what happens. Biden's State of the Union for 2024 was said to be feisty.
Is that the one that you sent me the clip of? Or was
Yes.
I think it was quite feisty.
It was quite feisty. It did take him ages to get invited by Mike Johnson. So it didn't happen until March. Normally it's meant to happen in February. He covered a range of topics. It was very like foreign relations focused this year. So he began talking about Ukraine, comparing Putin to Adolf Hitler, which obviously the Kremlin was not happy about because Putin's bogus reasoning for invading Ukraine was to denazify the border. President Biden used the term "my predecessor" to refer to Mr. Trump 13 times in a speech that lasted a little bit over an hour. And he accused Trump of bowing down to Russia and criticized him over the Capitol riot. He spent a few minutes on the genocide in Gaza, although he didn't call it that. He finished by talking about standing up to China. He also covered immigration, abortion, the economy. Dan Pfeiffer, who was the director of communications under President Obama, said, in every State of the Union I've ever worked on or watched, I always go and pee during the foreign policy section. And so I had a mild panic attack when we started with that. But I think he actually hit a bunch of really big things really fast. And I think it's actually a pretty savvy understanding of both how people consume media right now and how political narratives are set. We remember this from debates. If you start the first 15 minutes of a debate strong, almost nothing that happens in the last 5 minutes hurts you. But if you start out weak and you get better, then it doesn't matter. So he started with several big, strong moments, lots of applause, seeming very strong. And it sort of set the stage for how people were going to think about the debate moving forward.
I have a question. So the clip from Biden's State of the Union, which you sent to me. So behind him is obviously Vice President Kamala Harris. And then who is the gentleman in glasses?
The Speaker of the House.
Oh, I knew I got a ratty little vibe from him. I was like, his little, and he kept on being like shaking his head and like grimacing, like very much like, really? It was very petty.
It was so petty. And actually the first Biden State of the Union made history because it was the first time a president had two women behind him for the State of the Union, because he had obviously Kamala Harris as vice president, and then Nancy Pelosi was still Speaker of the House at that point. So those were the two that were behind him for his first State of the Union. So that was really historic.
I was going to say, from that clip that you showed me, which was really helpful, like contextualizing in terms of like what that moment, like what that speech feels like, and the energy in that room. It's a very like, everyone's very frisky, and like it feels quite like British politics. Like there's a lot of people like heckling and like making noises and like standing up and clapping. I really wasn't expecting it.
So that is something that I'm going to come to now, because that very much would not have been the case for Bartlet's State of the Union, or a State of the Union from the kind of late 90s, 2000s. That is very new. And so Dan Pfeiffer, the same ex-Toby, if you will, from the Obama administration, said, I think we are now hitting a transition period where every State of the Union is going to be like this now. There was such backlash when Congressman Joe Wilson yelled, "You lie," to Obama. And then everyone was on their best behavior for like a decade. And then last year, they got into this thing with Biden. Even though Biden won that exchange, now I think every one of these members is going to try and get some attention for doing it. So this is the future. If Biden is elected, he has 4 more of these. Democrats will probably do the same to Trump. So this is par for the course going forward. And they do talk about how Biden actually really enjoys that, because he was in Congress for so long himself.
1,000 years, yeah.
So yeah, basically like Dan Pfeiffer then goes on to say like he would be really at home in British politics in like prime minister's questions. Yeah. Because he was heckled, Biden was heckled last year and like truly won the exchange. Like he absolutely was loving it and like sending zingers back and forth.
It's good for elderly people's brains to talk like that, you know?
Yeah.
Try not to reduce, but
he was called on a hot mic at the end of his State of the Union saying, I kind of wish sometimes I was in cognitive decline. Which is just so funny to me.
It's good that he can joke about it, because
100%.
There were a few times during that speech where like the clip that I saw, I was like, ooh.
The clip that I sent Fiona, which will also be in the resource list for our Patreons, was of Marjorie Taylor Greene in her full MAGA ensemble heckling Biden at his latest State of the Union in March 2024.
It seems crazy that she's allowed to go into Congress dressed like that.
It does feel kind of wild.
Like, you know, it's a very important workplace. So like there is probably an unenforced uniform in Congress. Yeah. So, like, to go in like you wouldn't go in a slogan t-shirt. Like,
no, it's crazy.
You should get turned away and be like, come back in your suit. You are a working professional. This is Congress. Yeah. Put away your, like, Make America Great Again t-shirt and bomber jacket and hat and behave like a grown-up.
Truly. Basically, the far-right media had gotten so hyped up on the narrative that Biden was basically near death, that they were so shocked that he was able to like stand for over an hour and deliver quite an impassioned speech. Like it just so didn't fit the narrative that they'd been pushing of Biden's health, that they ran with Sean Hannity's like line on the State of the Union was jacked up Joe, not his normal self tonight, basically implying that Biden like had done loads of drugs to get himself jacked up for the State of the Union, which I do think was kind of like an own goal, in that they set expectations for Biden so low for people that people were actually shocked at what good health Biden is actually in.
Yeah, so it's like if you end up saying, oh, someone's so frail, someone's so weak, and then they're just like kind of frail and kind of weak. Everyone's like, oh.
And sending back zingers to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And then just to be like, well, he must be high.
And that is what even is the State of the Union.
Do you know what, Leigh? That was absolutely so helpful. Because also now I feel like this is going to help, because other questions I have is like, and there was like a little bit of stuff in like the scenes with Toby and the Congress people, which is like soon would be midterms. Thank you for bringing this back up. So basically what the Congress people were doing is they were campaigning for their own passion project issues to get a mention in the State of the Union. Okay, yeah. I feel like the structure of a 4-year period of a president is becoming slightly more of a known entity.
Yeah. Amazing.
Just because you're such a great teacher.
Oh. Well, until next time, Fiona, I hope you enjoy your time with Keifer Sutherland and Designated Survivor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be diving into that series because that is a bit of me. Like, love me a kind of like disaster movie energy. I just love something that's like a president who's perhaps like not necessarily supposed to be the president. It's perfection. Yeah, thank you. It's a gift. Thank you.
Well, until next time, guys, we are at Queer Gals Watch on all the socials. Also, you are so welcome to check out our Patreon, see if that might be something that you might find interesting and fun.
Swing
if you want to join us there.
Have a little look-see-loo.
Have a little gander. And then until next time, stay calm and enjoy some Naughty's telly.
Yeah, really, could not recommend more. Like, it feels like a real safety blanket. So I might just go and do that now.
Amazing.
Okay. Well, love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.